Hey, what's going on? I am Mark Baldone. I am a professional motorsports photographer, street photographer, and portrait photographer. I mainly work with Formula Drift Japan and drivers such as Daniel Messmer and Yukio Fausto. So I asked the question on Instagram, what would y'all like to hear about? Would you like to hear about a day of a competition day for myself, or would you like to hear about what a driver goes through on a competition day? Y'all chose the driver. Actually, it was split 50-50, but I chose the driver. So, typically, it varies. So, depending on the track, depending on where we're at, where the competition is at that day, that changes all of the logistics of everything. So, normally we're based out of Ebisu, which is a small track just right outside of Sendai, Japan, up in the mountains. Really famous for North Course. That's where they hold Drift Matsuri 4 times a year. And that's also where Yukio, Fausto, and Messmer are based out of. So depending on the competition day and where it's located and what competitions they're running that day, we will either wake up around 3:30 to leave to drive to go wherever. So really early day. Or if it's a local track, so say if it's at Ebisu, we won't wake up until around like 6 a.m. or so. So it really varies on distance to the track, because a lot of time logistically, we'll just drive to save money. So I'll just carpool, pay tolls together and drive to save money. But if it's a really far track like Okuabuki or Okayama or something like that, then we'll drive down there. But then we'll just take taxis and stuff, stay at hotels and whatnot. So after we get up and ready to leave, we always stop at the Gambini. So some drivers, they don't really like to eat. Other drivers like Daniel, they rely on me. He likes the American snacks. What kind of snacks you say? Spicy Cheetos. So the Australian loves spicy Cheetos. He doesn't like to eat too much, as he says it upsets his stomach, but he does stay hydrated throughout the day. Now, Fausto loves cold sandwiches, and he likes 7-Eleven latte. And if they don't have 7-Eleven latte, he likes the Boss Coffee latte, which I agree with because Boss Coffee is mint. So after we get done, we go into the Gambini. Now we drive to the venue. Now, depending on the track, there's certain tracks, cough, cough, Nico, who have terrible guidelines when it comes to when you can access the track, when you have to leave the track, and it just makes it a logistical nightmare. But all the other tracks in the circuit are very cool. So we get there anywhere between 7 o'clock to maybe 6:45-ish. Make sure we have all of our passes on us. Don't lose them like I did. Doors don't open until 8. So what happens before doors open to the public? Well, we have drivers meetings. So first we show up and we set up camp. Now, if it's a Thursday, typically if it's like a 3-day event where FDJ2 is running, then we'll come in Thursday and set everything up. But if it's just a normal Formula Drift Japan event, then we'll just rely on showing up on Friday, get everything set up. So by the time we show up on Saturday, we don't have to do any prep work. But I'll usually show up on Saturdays since I have a full-time job. This is my part-time job. So I'll show up on Saturdays. So when I get there, I set up my base station. So I set up my computer, get all my camera equipment laid out, get everything prepped. So what am I prepping for? I'm going to the driver's meeting. So typically they do the driver's meeting outside with all the drivers, and it's done by the judges. And for English speakers that don't speak Japanese, like Messmer, we'll have someone like Robbie Nishida, who unfortunately is not with us anymore in Formula Drift Japan. But typically he'll be the interpreter for all the English-speaking people, because there is quite a few in Formula Drift Japan. And then he'll make sure that they understand the clear, concise, what the judges want, what the judges do not want for that day. So it's very important that the drivers pay attention and know what the judges are looking for so they can adapt their drifting style to that. Now, after I grab a couple of quick pics so we can throw them up on the socials for that, I will go set up my base station for where I want to shoot practice. So practice for me is when I get all of my content. But for the drivers, right after the drivers meeting, now it's time to get ready. Now you're allotted around like 10 practice runs a day. Some drivers like to take all 10. Some drivers don't want to risk it if they're a little bit low on budget or equipment. They don't want to risk anything getting broken. So they'll go out there and do their drifting practice. And usually practice is about 3 hours. They typically run practice between 8:30 and 11:30. That's what time they normally do it, but Japan usually runs a little bit longer. So what are we looking for in these practices for the drivers? The drivers are communicating with their spotters. Typically on day one practice, you're not practicing battles. You're practicing making sure you're hitting your line, hitting your zones, and making adjustments for there, such as gear ratios, making sure there's no like boost leaks or anything like that. Your car feels good and it feels great. If your car feels good and it feels great, typically the drivers will shut it down so that way we don't run the risk of breaking anything. Other drivers like to take their full allotment of 10 runs or whatever and make sure that everything's dialed in and get that consistency and repetition. After that, we have lunch. So what do the drivers do during lunch? The drivers don't do much, honestly. They usually stick around their tents. Why? Because they like to meet fans. They like to sit around, sell merchandise. Other drivers like to walk around. I see Sam Lucas, also known as Samet. He likes to walk around with his selfie stick, doing his content creation and filming and talking to other drivers and interacting with fans. And he's very friendly face on the grid. Other drivers, say Daigo Sato, kind of in the shadows, back in his trailer, doesn't really like to interact, just that old school Japanese way. Nakamura is out and about. He sticks around, meets fans and everything. Echo Gal is very friendly with the fans. So yeah, it depends on the driver. Fausto and Daniel, they like to chill around the tent. And whenever fans come up and they talk to fans, but usually Daniel, to kill the nerves, he either juggles like a clown, or he'll scroll social media, or he'll get with the spotter and they'll try to figure out what they want to do and how they want to attack qualifying. So after lunch is done, usually lunch is done about 12:20. It's about an hour 15 minute kind of lunch, kind of quick. Then that's when qualifying happens. So qualifying will take up the rest of the day. So you get 2 runs in qualifying, and they're very important because you only get 2 runs, but they're spread very far apart because typically you'll have like 35 to 42 cars show up to try to qualify, and only top 15 or top 16 in certain instances only qualify. So what are we doing during qualifying? Well, it depends on your ranking in the series. So if you're last rank in the series, you are up first, and then it goes all the way down until the number 1 ranking goes last for qualifying. So it really depends. I find that the drivers that are a little bit in that middle spot, they like it a lot more. Some drivers, like Daniel, like to know what they need to score to get top qualify. Is he going to play it safe? Is he going to have to actually send it to get a good qualifying run in? During the first qualifying run, they'll film it. I'll send that film over to the driver in 4K so that way he can review it. So Fausto likes to review his footage 9:16, and then Daniel likes to review it vertically. So he likes a little bit more zoomed in to see where he's at. So depending on how the runs go, depends on how I shoot and how I film for the drivers. So qualifying, like I said, starts around 12:30. It'll end around 4, but Japan, it runs over. It usually runs around until like 5 o'clock. It's pretty slow out here depending on crashes, anything like that. So what do the drivers do in between the qualifying rounds? Well, they change tires. They also review, and then they'll just watch the qualifying runs and see what the judges are looking at. They'll notice that the judges wanting you deeper in the zone. Are the judges wanting less angle and more speed? Are they knocking you for having too much speed and not enough angle? So it depends, but it also is a good time for the drivers to review. Other drivers, they don't like to watch it at all. They just like to relax until it's time for them to come up, and then they'll go out and do their run and make their adjustments. So that's it usually for the day one. After the qualifying, then they'll do like a top 32 introduction. They'll bring everybody onto stage who qualified. This is a chance for the fans to interact with the drivers. Drivers are all waving on stage and everything, so they'll start them all the way up. And then that's also where you'll see your pairings. They'll release their pairings of what the top 32 battle is going to look like. And then they'll have typically an autograph session. So this is where all the fans get to come and they bring all the merchandise. I have seen everything. I have seen drivers sign everything from just little pamphlets to fenders that have fell off and the track gave them to the driver or gave them to the fans. So I have seen fans get whole fenders, spoilers, anything and everything. The Japanese just love everything signed. Little kids come up there. It's really cool to see the drivers' kids in the lines. So when their father, they're all excited to get their father's autograph and everything. It's pretty cool. So after that, we'll wrap up and then we'll head home. Depends on if, like I said, if we're if we're in driving range, we'll just drive back to Ebisu. If not, we'll head back to our hotel and go out to eat with the team. And then we'll call it a night. Usually we try to get into bed around 9 o'clock. Some people like to watch Drift Masters. Me and Daniel have been up watching Drift Masters because in Japan, Drift Masters is in the middle of their day. So it'll be 12 o'clock at night and we'll be watching Drift Masters. But I guess when you're young like Daniel, you can do that as a top athlete. So the next day is pretty similar to the first day. But usually top 32 day is extremely hectic. So like I said, we'll wake up early and then we'll get there. They only have an hour practice in the morning for the top 32. It starts around 8 o'clock right when doors open. And this is when the drivers are actually practicing battles. So this is where you'll see crazy battles. This is where I like to get a lot of my footage for myself because you'll see a lot of hypothetical scenarios. You'll see Daigo Sato versus Naoki Nakamura. And they're not even facing each other in the event. It's just they just line up next to each other whenever the drivers line up for their practice. So it's always cool to get cool footage like that to see like legends of the sport battling it out. This is also where I like to get a lot of footage for Fausto. This is where I do more of the photography stuff, the side of the thing. So I like to get the cars battling and that. So, but this is also a scary time because you could crash. The drivers could sometimes be sending it a little bit too much. And then now you have to go back in for repairs because top 32 battles start immediately after practice. So right after practice ends at 9 o'clock. 9:10, number 1 and 32 are out there. So there is no breaks. So that's usually in the morning practice. The drivers like to get out there really quick. Fausto and Daniel like to be one of the first cars out there. So that way they can get 1 or 2 battles done and then come back in, change tires, and then get ready for the hecticness of top 32. So top 32 is crazy. You'll have 2 battles. So you'll have a leader and a chaser, and then a chaser and a leader. They swap. So say there's contact in the run, now you got to come back to the pits. So for me, I have to if Fausto gets hit, I have to run because I want to get that footage of him I want to get that footage of the damage of the car and the mechanics working and stuff like that. So it's a very hectic time. Then if your driver gets knocked out of the top 32, then it is a very chill weekend. Because now you can just start cleaning up, packing up. And that's when I just get footage for everybody else for my own personal Instagram. I'm not working for the client anymore. Now I'm just getting, that's just bonus stuff for me. But if your driver makes it through there, then he'll go to lunch. And then when we get back from lunch, around 12:40 is when lunch ends, 1 o'clock. Then we'll do the top 16 parade. This is where they'll announce the driver battles but for the top 16. And this is also time for the drivers to let loose in Japan. They love their hats. They love to do cheers with the crowd. Fausto always has his Brazilian flags. There's a huge Brazilian contingent out here, so they're all going crazy for Fausto. Daniel likes to play it cool. Echo Gal likes to joke around a lot. She's really funny with her introductions. You'll have the YouTubers like Dr. Rubber and everything. They'll do like whole like introductions, and it's really fun. It's really fun to watch. It's a time for the drivers to let their personalities shine. They'll also bring out the kids walk, so the kids get to walk the track, and then all the drivers take pictures with the kids and whatnot. So after that, they'll all drive. They'll have flags hanging out of their cars, going back to the pits. But then right when they get back to the pits, it's game time. Top 16 and on is they go from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. or until the end of the competition, and it is just back to back to back. There is no rest time for the drivers once it hits top 16. So top 16 battles happen. I've seen the craziest stuff there in top 16. Fausto almost broke his hand, so him and I think it was King Gucci crashed. I ran back to the tent. People were yelling in Portuguese, Japanese, English. I look at Fausto. He's getting tended to by his family. He has like his wrist all bandaged up. You have the officials with a time clock of 10 minutes. The mechanics are trying to fix everything. I'm throwing a camera into Fausto's face and blasting away trying to get pictures. Here's that picture right now. Fausto with his injured hand. And then right after that, he has to muscle it up and go back out to finish the battle. And it is just hectic. Top 16 and then top 8. And that's when the anticipation rises. You could feel it in the building. The pace of the event, and then the crowd's getting into it. I'm getting into it. I'm like cheering for my favorite drivers. I'm cheering for my clients to make sure they win. And then finally, after all the battles and everything's done, it is time for the awards ceremony, and then another autograph session, and then the worst part of the whole thing is packing up. Because I get suckered in as the photographer. I'm working with the team, so I'm part of the team. I don't have to help stand the tents up, but we help tear down. Then you'll run into weird stuff like in Okabuki, where we had a torrential downpour of rain. Samet's running with his camera. We're all huddled under one tent. With Naoki, we're all in Naoki's tent. It's just a blast. But yeah, that's typically how a weekend goes for the competitor. Like I said, every driver is different. Some drivers don't like to interact. Other drivers like to joke around. Like I always joke around with Daniel. I joke around with Fausto. But that competitor in them, you know when you can joke around and when you can't joke around. So I kind of like to lead the drivers to do their thing. And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm blessed to be able to do this. I think it's really cool. I love the drift community. And it's one of the only sports where you get to interact with the actual drivers, no matter how popular they are. The fans have direct interaction with the drivers, and I think that's really cool. I think that's what makes drift driving stand out from a competition standpoint. But yeah, that's typically what goes on for a competitor throughout the weekend. Like I said, it's a lot of sitting around waiting, driving, reviewing film, and then back to sitting around and waiting. But yeah, if y'all like this content, please like, subscribe, share. If you want to see any other type of video, whatever kind of recommendations you want, just drop them down below in the comment section. I'll hear you out and I'll try to create that video. So until next time, deuces.